Hey, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Sarah Schultz. I am a realtor in the Northern Nevada market, serving Reno and all the surrounding areas. And on today's video, as I do each and every month, I'm going to be sharing with you a data deep dive. Now, in our market, our MLS publishes the data at the end of each month in arrears. So these are going to be somewhat lagging metrics because this is published in July. However, it is a summary of everything that happened in June. Not only that, but these numbers are based on closed sales. So if you think about our market having an average escrow timeline of about 30 days, people make decisions based on what's going on in the market in real time, right? So when these closed transactions got into contract, this is kind of giving us a sense of what the market was doing at that time, if that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, feel free to leave me a comment below or shoot me a message. You can book a free call with me. There's a link to do that in the show notes below, and I can explain this and whatever else you may need in greater depth. But for now, let's just dive right in. Now, if you watched my video last week, that might be a really good precursor to this. So if you missed last week's video, go back to my channel and catch up on that first. In last week's video, I dissected an article that Redfin recently published that had a very bold headline about how everything is shifted into a buyer's market. And I kind of compared that with the metrics that I had at the time, which was before this data was published. So I kind of compared that with our local market data, which was super interesting, but we have a lot to unpack here with the data that I have now. So if you haven't watched that video, go ahead and do that. If you want to skip all that, there's still going to be a lot of great information here, and I do have a lot to unpack. And of course, as I do each month, I will be giving you my advice for both buyers and sellers at the end of the video. So make sure that you stay for all of that. Don't go anywhere. All right, let's dive in. First and foremost, let's talk about our median sales price. This actually did increase, not by a whole lot. Last month when I did this video, I think the increase was by like 0.1%. It was super marginal, and it was kind of this feeling, especially in the last video where I was like kind of comparing our market to what's going on nationally. I was saying, if this growth has stopped, that's one thing, but once we shift into prices going down, median sales price going down, then we can confidently say, okay, we are following the national trend. However, that's not what we're seeing here, but there are a lot of other numbers that do support a cooling market, that do support this buyer's market that seems to be emerging, but among those is not the median sales price, which did increase by 3.9%. Okay, not a huge increase, but an increase nonetheless, landing at $615,700. Now, keep in mind, you guys, this is for single-family residences only. I'm not in this video talking about condos, townhouses, vacant land, and I'm definitely not talking about commercial. That would be a whole other agent. And I'm also not talking about manufactured homes. So this is just for single family residences, and this is just in Washoe County. So median sales prices ever so slightly increased. Let's look at the rest of what's going on with our numbers. Up next, we have number of closed sales. This also increased, coming in at 448 closed sales. This is a 2.3% increase month over month, but it's an 11.4% increase year over year. So we actually had a lot of market activity in general in June, and I can attest to that on the ground. I think that was probably the busiest month I've ever had in real estate. So both buyers and sellers, there was just a lot of activity all around, but let's keep going to see what we can find out as we look at more of these KPIs. This next metric really does support the notion that we have shifted into a buyer's market, and that is median days till contract. This is the time that it takes from a listing to go live to get an offer accepted. So median days to contract in our market for the closeout of June landed at just 21 days. I know this is a huge increase, right? 16.7% to be precise, and that's the month over month. Year over year, you guys, this number increased by 50%. However, if you take a step back and don't just look at the change month over month or year over year, 21 days to contract is still a pretty hot market. I mean, that's less than 30 days to get most inventory, on the move, and I still feel like that's pretty hot. But there's a lot to unpack there. I'm not going to get into that yet. Just stay with me. I have a few more numbers to go over with you, and then we'll dive into what it all means, the analysis, and also, of course, that really valuable advice for both buyers and sellers. Percent of list price received came in at 98.7%. So whatever a home is listed for, sellers are getting 98.7% of that price, of that asking price. And if you watch my videos every month, you know that I always say this is the number that rarely changes that drastically in our market. This month is no exception. It did decrease, however. I don't know if that's really worth noting since it was only 0.1% month over month. 0.9% year over year though, so still less than 1% of change. That doesn't necessarily tell you a whole lot though. It's basically telling you that the listing agents in our market are pricing things appropriately, right? It's not really telling you whether prices are going up or down. We have different metrics for that. This is just telling you that when priced appropriately, sellers are getting what they're asking for better or for worse. All right, here's another interesting one for you. This is median sold price per square foot. So sold being the operative word here. We're not talking about the median price per square foot for the asking price. This is what it actually sold for. This came in at $327, which was no change. This actually stayed the same month over month from the closeout of May, and actually increased 2.8% year over year. So prices are holding strong. They may even be increasing as far as our median sales price. Price per square foot has not changed. So we'll get into this in greater depth, but I would just say, despite the media sensationalizing, because don't we know how they love to do that, this isn't some big market crash, right? Things may be shifting in transactional relationships where buyers have more leverage. That may be true. And over time, this probably will drive down prices. However, it's not this crazy market crash. I've seen people comparing this to 2008, all kinds of things on the internet. Just let's look at the actual data because the math doesn't lie, you guys. And the media, well, we know that they lie, right? So anyway, I'm going to keep going. Number of new listings actually decreased pretty significantly by 6.9% month over month, landing at 606 new listings. This is a 7.4% increase year over year. So number of new listings, 606. I think that in our market, when the weather shifts, which this year happened pretty early on in spring, I think there's this big boom in the market with market activity in general. But I think a lot of sellers get this idea that, hey, it's time to make a move. The buyers are out. The weather's nice. People are moving. Let's get this house on the market. And I don't know that it really tapers off, but maybe we plateau. Maybe that's the way to put it. So I don't know that this is necessarily a response to all the headlines about it being a buyer's market and, maybe people are feeling uneasy about selling, but we're going to unpack all that later. I only have 2 more KPIs for you. So stay with me and then we're going to dig into all of this. Number of new listings went down. Active inventory, however, went up. This increased by 7.1% month over month, landing at 1,159 for active inventory. And again, this is only for single family residences. You guys do need to know though that year over year, this was a 45.4% increase. And I have to say on the ground, this one really does hit home. It does feel very real. A year ago, there was just not very much inventory for buyers to choose from at all. And I know number of new listings went down, but it was pretty slight and active inventory is up. This means that buyers have a lot more choices. So they have more leverage, yes, but they can also take more time. They can be more discerning. They can, be a little bit more nitpicky with what they can live with or can't live without. So these things are all really important to keep in mind. And my last KPI is months supply of inventory. So this means if no more inventory came on the market, it would take this amount of time for the current inventory that's available to be absorbed by the market demand. And so that number came in at 2.6 months. This is up by 4.7% month over month and 30.5% year over year. So There used to be a metric that we relied upon that said that a balanced market is 6 months of inventory. I don't think that's true anymore. I think in the post-COVID real estate world, wherein everyone had this like super urgent, rushed, way of doing transactions in business and the heat that it brought to the market, I think that we never really recovered from that. I don't know that we never will, but even with mortgage interest rates increasing significantly from then, I mean, it has slowed the pace of the market. It has really shifted things. However, I would say that a balanced market now is probably closer to 3 months rather than 6, despite what that metric has always kind of said. Okay, so when we look at these KPIs as a whole, what are we seeing? We are seeing that inventory is slowly building. That means buyers have a lot more choices. As I was just saying, they can be more discerning. They can be, picky, I might even journey to say. But on the other hand, prices are holding strong. Prices are increasing. If you look at median sales price, they are staying the same if you look at median sold price per square foot. However, what we're not seeing is that prices are plummeting, which is how the media is kind of depicting this whole narrative. And maybe in other markets, that is what's happening. I don't know. I only work here. But I do have really great referral partners nationwide, so just keep that in mind. However, in our market, we are not seeing that. And even though the days on market increased, homes are still selling really fast. I do think that overall, like based on our recent history in our market, and I'm saying recent, like last 5 years, like it does feel like we are in the midst of a shift. It does feel like buyers have more leverage, more choices now than they have the entire 5 years that I've been doing this. However, I am not comfortable enough to just slap this like buyer's market sticker over this yet. I do think it's coming though. I don't think that, you can look at these numbers realistically and just say like, oh, nothing's changing, but like they are, right? But it's gonna be a slow pivot, in my opinion. I don't have a crystal ball. My best advice for buyers would be to have everything in order so that when you find the one, you are like ready, right? Like have your financing in order. If you have a contingent home to sell, make sure you have those pieces lined up. If I'm your agent and you have an agent out of state, working on that departing home, make sure that we're in touch. So have everything in order. However, know that when you go into the real estate arena, if you will, you do have more choices. If the listing's been sitting for longer than the average days on market for that neighborhood, and you're looking for a deal, that might be a great way to find one. So work with your agent. If you have specific parts of the city or of your market where you are shopping, make sure you're aware of what the average days on market should be for those areas, because you'll know a deal when you see one, and that might be a scenario where you have more leverage. Not all listings are gonna have that at this point. I don't know what's gonna happen, but it could shift here soon. Let's shift over to the seller side, which I always tell you guys, unless you are buying your first home or selling your last home, you're usually both a buyer and a seller at the same time, and it's really hard to win on both sides. But with the right strategy in place and the right agent in your corner, it's not impossible. And I see it all the time where we are victorious on both sides, and there's nothing better than that. But anyway, let's switch over to the seller side. So my biggest advice to you is that pricing strategically really matters, and that looking at comps right now is kind of a different ballgame than it has been in the last year or two even. We're not really concerned with the house that sold down the street, in spring, right? We're pretty deep in summer now at this point. We want to look at what's sitting on the market now, what has had recent price reductions now and is still sitting there. That's going to be your biggest obstacle. No one cares about what sold in April anymore. Like things have shifted. Things have softened. I'm not going to, really drill it in and make the big bold headlines like Redfin is doing, or like we're seeing in other markets in the nation. Here in Reno, it is feeling rather balanced, if you will. If you are in a position where you have to sell, even with top-notch staging, even with the best marketing in the market, I would love to have a hand in that, just saying. But even with all the things that make a listing really shine, it's going to eventually come down to price, right? Like even the best looking listing in this weird scenario that we are in with the market in this weird shift, it's going to come down to pricing. And I'll tell you personally, I just had a listing where we dealt with this. We had it staged. It looked incredible. We had professional photos, drone photos, Matterport imaging. We had everything looking so good. And there were homes down the street that had none of that. And they hadn't had the level of like updating and all the things that my listing had. And yet people were so concerned. Well, that home is still sitting there and it's priced less than yours. So I constantly was having to defend, well, we have granite countertops and we have a full like bathroom remodel. We have, like the staging just made it look so good. And ultimately we did come out on top and we did end up getting really close to asking price. However, you're going to start seeing that more and more. People are going to be comparing it to what's sitting on the market because we are seeing by these numbers that inventory is starting to build. That is certainly not to say that you shouldn't stage or you shouldn't pay extra for top of the line marketing. In fact, I'm saying the exact opposite. That stuff matters more now than it ever has. Like seriously, because there is more competition on the seller side than there has been in literally 5 years. So you want your listing to look its very best in order to attract buyers. And buyers right now are savvy, are discerning, but there is still a very strong demand in our market. So with the right strategy in place, you can still come out on top. All right, you guys, that was a lot to unpack. What questions do you have? Did I brush over anything you want to go further in depth about? Are you making a move in real estate or are you thinking about it? I would love to help you, and you can book a free strategy call with me. There's a link in the show notes to do that in the description box below. It is no obligation. It's not my vibe. I don't like to spam or pressure or whatever, I want us to vibe. I want us to connect. I want us to both feel like we are well matched. But at the very least, I'm more than happy to answer your questions and at least steer you in the right direction and make sure you feel really confident with what you should do next to win in real estate. All right, and if you haven't already, it would mean the absolute world to me if you guys would hit the like and that subscribe button below. I put out new videos each and every week about the Northern Nevada lifestyle, the Reno Sparks housing market, and of course, all things to do with buying and selling real estate. You guys, this means so much to me. I seriously thank you for watching. All the time when I get discovery call bookings and I talk to people, they're like, I can't believe that I'm talking to you. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm just a person. I can't believe you're watching me. It's really cool, seriously. And you guys really mean the world to me. And I love what I do. And I love helping you out. So please give me that opportunity and we'll get you going in the right direction. All right, see you next week.